What's up, y'all? Will here at Schedulefly. Oh, I'm so glad that we finally got to do this episode. This has been being planned for a while. I met Trace Smith last year. He's the CEO of NextGlass, and NextGlass is the worldwide leader in BEV tech. So both Trace and I are part of companies that serve the world of hospitality with different types of tools and technologies. Now, Schedulefly has one tool, restaurant employee scheduling software. Within NextGlass, there's Untapped for Business, Beer Advocate, Osner, Hop Culture, Ollie, probably more. I don't remember, but there's a lot of stuff in there, and but it's all around beverages, it started all around beer, and now they've expanded out to wine and spirits, and Trace will talk about in this episode, so I don't want to spoil it, but you may have heard of Untapped. There's 10 million people with the Untapped app on their phone. If you're a beer enthusiast, you most likely have. And, you know, Trace and I sat down. We spoke for about an hour. He has got the perfect CEO mind. I'll say that. I was thinking about that afterwards on my drive home. Processes information quickly, calm, smart, strategic, cares about his team, cares about the industry he serves, and building a great company. He's gone, from having a partner and having a smaller operation to just a really impressive business. And it's really just fascinating to hear the story, how he thinks, where we are now, where we're going. And you're going to enjoy this episode. Not a restaurant owner, but somebody that sells to lots of restaurant owners and lots of consumers too. So that's a unique part of this. Well, that is all. I will leave it to the episode from here, but I do want to take a moment to offer a quick word from our sponsor, Popmenu. Popmenu is, they're a partner of ours at Schedulefly, and they're also our sponsor here. And they're all about making your day easier and your sales bigger. They will simplify your marketing operations, bring in more guests, and capture customer data for personalized remarketing to keep them coming back. With one super simple to use platform that integrates with most point of sales like Toast and Square and a number of others, Popmenu starts with a beautifully designed, easy to update, interactive menu that transforms the guest experience online. It includes a brand new website that's optimized for search engines like Google for no additional cost, automated digital marketing, online ordering and waitlisting, and you'll never miss another call with their AI answering solution that costs as little as 47 cents an hour. And there's just so much more in there, y'all. There's a link to Popmenu in the show notes. My 2 cents is this. At Schedulefly, we have a good number of mutual customers with Popmenu. I've talked to a lot of those mutual customers, and consistently they say, great product, great company, great customer service, great results. That's what you're looking for. So check out Popmenu. And check out this episode with Trace Smith, CEO, NextGlass. And if I can talk him into it, maybe our second sponsor for this podcast. We'll see. Had to throw that in there. All right, y'all enjoy. More episodes coming soon. See ya. We are recording. We are here in Charlotte, in town, and I'm with Trace Smith. Trace, introduce yourself.
Well, I'm Trace Smith. I'm the CEO at NextGlass. We are the parent company of Untapped and Ollie primarily. We've got some other brands like Beer Advocate and Hop Culture as well. And a lot of fun to be on the show today.
So this is an interesting, both personally and professionally. You and I went to the same boarding school up in Virginia, Woodbury Forest, and which has been that makes it a little easier to get people's attention and connect. And here we are, both running businesses in the hospitality space. How did you initially get into what you're doing now?
It was serendipitous in a lot of ways. So I, graduated from Woodbury and went to Wake Forest and majored in finance. And I'm from a small town in North Carolina, so I didn't grow up with anyone whose father was an investment banker or a corporate lawyer or anything like that. But worked hard and was a decent student, and so I just kind of followed all my peers that were off to the investment banking interviews and the management consulting interviews. And I, as a 20-year-old looking for an internship, I'm not really sure I understood what any of that was. I mean, you can read about it online. There were websites like Wall Street Oasis and things like that at the time, but it was basically just looking for a job, right? And it's just kind of the lemming that followed the horde of other finance majors into these interviews, and got in a job at an investment bank. And this was an interesting time. I graduated college in 2010. And so I interned summer of 2009. Got back to school and saw friends start to get their job offers rescinded, right? This is kind of post Lehman.
Yeah.
And anyway, took the job, was working in investment banking, and, kind of did the whole lemming process part 2, and then followed all the other young investment bankers to do a private equity kind of interview process, and got a job at a firm in between New York and Charlottesville. And I kind of woke up and said, I don't really think this is what I want to do with my life. I was learning a lot. You're working the 100-hour weeks, but I wasn't happy. I'd always been entrepreneurial. I started small businesses online, selling like sports cards with my father on eBay when I was a child, scalp tickets on StubHub. When I was in investment banking, there's so much desk time where there's just dead time waiting on a partner to hand you work. And the Bobcats were the last team, now Hornets, to introduce dynamic ticket pricing. So I kind of exploited that. So I'd always...
Did you really?
Yeah. And so I'd always been entrepreneurial and felt like I could kind of figure out how to make a buck. And I just felt like kind of crank turning at a middle market private equity firm. There were people, and like, it is interesting work if you're okay kind of running that process over and over again. And, we were a generalist firm looking at different types of businesses, and, everyone around me was like, this is so fascinating. And I'm like, it's just running the same process over and over again. And I just didn't have kind of the wait in line patience. And a guy I worked with in banking called me and said, hey, I've got an idea to build software for the alcohol space. As you know, from ScheduleFly, a lot of the software in and around BevAlc is just not that good because of the 3-tier system that stifled innovation in our space for a long time. So he called me and said, hey, Trace, will you be on the board? I want another young person. And his name's Kurt Taylor. It was his idea. Full credit to Kurt. He called me and said, will you help us build this and be on the board? And I said, sure. And as I got closer to it, I realized, one, Kurt's someone that I worked well with and trusted and respected, and I knew I wanted to operate. I felt like, as a 24-year-old private equity associate, parachuting into these businesses that wwere founder-led, that had built $10, $20, $30 million EBITDA businesses. And I'm kind of the 24-year-old in the corner, giving them a proctology about their numbers. And I realized how little I knew really about what it took to operate. And so for whatever it was I was going to do 10 years down the road, I knew I needed to operate and run a business, and I wanted to build something. And Kurt kind of offered that opportunity. I do think that, as you know, with kind of your founding group, having partners is important. Building a business is a lonely existence. I admire and respect the solo operators that are able to do it on their own as solo founders. But Kurt and I, got off to the races in 2014, raised a little bit of money to hire a couple engineers, and like so many startups, our original idea didn't work. That was the Next Class app. We were testing wines and beers with a mass spectrometer, chemically profiling the wines and beers. And the idea was, let's acquire a bunch of users. If we can get a lot of user eyeballs, that will attract the attention of the retailers and the wholesalers and the producers. And so had a successful launch, got that going. We're building out menu publishing software that's become Untapped for Business while we were doing that. Thank God we were building that too, because the Next Class app took off. And for a lot of reasons, the UI UX wasn't great. It was expensive to test all the beers and wines, which of course we knew going in. But we got a lot of attention, and that kind of helped sustain us to the launch of Untapped for Business. But we were licensing data from the Untapped founders to power menu publishing. So we've got kind of data-based item additions. So we use the Untapped catalog of about 3 million beers that are commercially available to power our customers' menus. So instead of having to go pull the information about every beer on your menu and then manually add that, copy, paste, label image, all of that, that's all in the Untapped database. And so if you type in SIE, into the search field, we've got a smart search algorithm that's going to pull up the most popular Sierra Nevada beers. You click add, and then you can customize what you want on your print menu template. Many operators don't want to print multiple pages. It's expensive. So you can pull off the full description. Whereas online, where the real estate's unlimited, on your website menu, maybe you want the full description. Maybe you want the brewery location. Maybe you want the untapped rating. So we were licensing that data, and that ultimately led to the acquisition of Untapped. And so, it's kind of to kind of go back to your original question, I've rambled a bit, but, it was really serendipity, right? I got to know Kurt early in my career, respected him. He called me. I thought it was a good idea and wanted to go build something, and just kind of fell into it. It's not something that, if you'd asked 20-year-old me, what are you going to be doing in 5 years? Running a tech startup was not what I thought I'd be doing, but it's worked out.
Yeah, it sure has, man. That's an interesting, good for you for getting out. I call it the funnel. Like, you go to some of these schools and, there's a funnel. You kind of get funneled into, whether it's maybe law school or med school or investment banking or whatever, and then everybody's kind of doing the same thing. And but if you have a little bit of that entrepreneurial DNA or whatever it is, you want to do things different, or build your own, or try your own thing, or make your own mistakes, which is a part of the entrepreneurial process, is like trial and error and learning as you go. And you guys went through that.
Yeah, I'll never forget like my last night of investment banking, a partner who is probably in his early 50s came to me and another analyst who was in my analyst class and said, I want you two to go get 2 years of private equity experience and then go do something else. Don't be me at 50. And
interesting,
and
really.
Was kind of, yeah. I mean, it's hard, right? You get the golden handcuffs, right? You get those bonuses paid out as a banking partner or whatever every year. It's a great career path, but that really hit me, right? That this guy was midway through his career, kind of prime earning years, and said, go do the private equity thing for 2 years and go do something else, go build something. And I took his advice.
Well, that's wise. I mean, I think I know people that are in that place right now that would say the exact same thing to somebody half their age or whatever. It's interesting because you're now the CEO of this business, and you guys are you have a lot of there's a lot going on here. That's a challenging road as well. I mean, I look up at I just drove by the Lending Tree building, and I think of Doug Lebda, who went from an idea, living in his apartment in Charlottesville, to starting Lending Tree, to taking it public, whatever they've done. Like, he's just done every phase of that, and that's a incredibly diverse set of skills. You clearly have a lot of that in you at a smaller scale, and maybe that scale too one day. But there's a big difference between what you do and what we do. I mean, we've never taken on any capital, and so we kind of have ourselves to answer to. And, that's certainly limited our growth, but it's allowed us to have a lot of, things that we want, flexibility of life and lifestyle and life balance and so forth. Tell me about going from, going from an idea to building a business to now running a pretty large business. You have to master a lot of different types of skills to do that.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I've seen the whole journey, right? I mean, initially it was Kurt, myself, and a couple programmers, right, that built kind of the early software that NextGlass launched. And I remember those early days driving down to Wilmington where Kurt was based, and we didn't pay for hotels, right? I'd stay in their guest bedroom in their little condo, he and his wife, because we didn't have any money. And, anything that was unnecessary, you just didn't do, right? It was very much kind of a bootstrapped operation. And, we hit a point where, I think you can build a great standalone technology startup. And, I say it a lot, kind of going from 0 to 10 can be a rock fight. And we lived that rock fight for a long time, and it's stressful. I mean, right? I've got more gray hair than I should at 35, and a lot of that was the early days of NextGlass and getting it to a point where we were profitable, which was unusual for technology startups. I think I learned enough early in my career in banking and private equity to know that two 24-year-old, 25-year-old kids from North Carolina weren't going to go raise venture capital from a Bay Area or New York firm. And if we were going to do that, that's the only way we were going to do it, was to do it right. And so we just said that's not going to be the approach we take. Instead, we're going to bootstrap this. In the early days, we sold annual software licenses because we needed the cash up front to fund the growth of the business. And those were like intentional decisions. And I then fast forwarding from kind of 2016 when we launched Untapped for Business to the end of 2019, Kurt and I had a conversation, and I think I had 14 direct reports at the time, and we were just bursting at the seams. You could just feel it. It just didn't feel like we could continue to grow without some systems and processes and some experienced folks that had seen scale. We had some phenomenal, and still do, great team members that were there in the early days. But if you're going to kind of go to that next level, it helps to have folks, and it doesn't have to be everyone. I think we've done a pretty good job of balancing folks that were here in the early days, 2016, 17, with folks that had seen real growth and scale at other places, and bring that knowledge and experience and wisdom, because I sure as hell haven't seen it all, right?
Yeah.
And so, we raised a little bit of money from a growth equity firm in Boston, and that was interesting. We signed the deal up February 14th, so Valentine's Day of 2020. There was this thing called COVID. I was actually in Boston the week that the first reported case showed up in the U.S., and the firm, PSG is its name, hung in there and closed the deal with us at the end of March of 2020. And
really?
Yeah, which I remember the night that the NBA season got canceled, sitting with my wife at home saying, there's no way this deal's going to get closed. And, we're looking at bars and restaurants starting to shut down, and, bars, restaurants, and brewery tap rooms are our lifeblood. That's who we serve and have served since 2016. And I mean, you went through it too. We've talked about it. It was tough.
Yeah.
And I told PSG, I don't want to charge our customers at the end of March, April, or May during the lockdown.
Yeah.
And that's when I knew I probably had the right partner in PSG, and that they said, okay. They didn't get freaked out that our revenue or not GAAP revenue, but cash revenue for April and May was going to go down by 90% for 2 months. That's a tough thing to tell an investor before you close a deal. But I said, look, it's the right thing to do by our customers, and if we do right by our customers, they'll do right by us, and reciprocate that whenever they're able to with their loyalty. And so, but we're going through COVID, and I'm bringing on new team members, and we made a couple acquisitions that year, and then 2 the following year. And I think you have to learn to delegate. You have to learn to not be involved in everything. There's just too much to, have your hands in. I try to kind of be at 30,000 feet and at 3 feet. Like when there's an acute issue, I'm going to dive in and try to get my hands dirty and help. But you can't micromanage, and you've got to hire great folks who are, kind of mission driven and vision aligned. And we talk a lot about our mission and vision and core values here. And, that's not to say that everything's perfect. Sometimes I feel like kind of the duck, where I try to be calm on the surface, but the feet are working hard under the water. But we're fortunate to have really good people, and had a colleague in the industry, not someone that works with us, who visited one of our offices one time, and then saw our team at the Craft Brewers Conference where I just got back from last week. And he said, one of the things that strikes me about everyone I've been around on your team is that everyone seems to give a crap. He did not use the word crap, but don't want to put your podcast in the explicit category.
We're good, man.
And I don't think I'd ever been told, I don't think anyone had ever said anything that meant more to me in my role at Next Glass than that, right? That everyone that he'd been around when I'm not around seemed to really care. And, it's fun, right? We serve the same customer base largely that you do. And we talk about improving lives, both of our employees, with the benefits we provide and the pay and the career acceleration opportunities, but also of our customers. And that's fun to get out of bed in the morning and do that. And we obviously serve users on Untapped and Beer Advocate as well. And I tell the team a lot, this beats selling shower curtain rings, right? It's fun to go do every day, that people care about your products and save time and money. And that's really rewarding.
It is an incredible industry to serve. And I did not have that appreciation for this industry when we got started. I mean, I had worked in restaurants as a bus boy and salsa boy and stuff like that, but it really frankly, in large part, through doing the podcast, I've come to appreciate that, because, I mean, we just have this desktop software, and people sign up and they use it, and if they need something they call us, but otherwise we don't, we just don't interact with our customers. The podcast has enabled me to go out and speak with hundreds of, probably over 1,000 restaurant owners over the years, and brewery owners and distillery owners and hospitality people. And I'm so grateful now to serve this space, because it is full of people that, to your point, this is why I'm saying this, that give a crap. Like they do what they do. Hopefully it's financially rewarding for them, but they do what they do often out of just passion and love for serving other people. So serving that industry is a wonderful thing to do. You serve a really large audience. You've got consumers, you've got, just break down a little bit more about who your audience is and why you guys, what you do for them and how you make their life a little bit better.
For sure. So on the consumer side, we've got a little over 10 million registered users on the Untappd app. Smaller audiences on Beer Advocate and Hop Culture. Most people know us for Untappd, and Untappd's the largest beer rating and review search and discovery platform online. So most users use our mobile app, which is free, to search and discover new breweries, tap rooms, bars, restaurants, and to check in is what we call it. So basically rate and review beers. It's interesting, and I take no credit for this. The founders of Untappd were smart in two ways. One, they gamified the app, so our users unlock badges for different drinking accomplishments. So 5 IPAs or 10 beers at a ballpark, and so there's sort of a badge gamification system that makes it fun. But also, our users rate beers, not the individual venues. So is where some of these platforms like Yelp or TripAdvisor can kind of get into an antagonistic relationship with the customers they serve. We don't have that. For sure, every conference I go to, there's brewers that pick nits, and I think in some cases rightfully so, with the rating system, and we're kind of constantly evaluating that and how we can make that better, because IPAs are kind of king in terms of receiving high ratings, whereas lagers and other styles that are less hoppy tend to not get as high ratings. And but it's one thing to have a beer rated below what you think it should. It's another to have your tap room or your bar or your restaurant when it's your livelihood, right? And so
yeah, for sure.
I think the founders of Untappd were smart in not allowing users to rate the venues. So that's Untappd, and that's really user centric. But we leverage that audience on Untappd for Untappd for Business platform, which is our menu publishing platform. So menu publishing and promotional platform. There's really two pieces of what we call the value prop to a bar or restaurant or brewery tap room. And if you look at our customer base, we're approaching 20,000 customers, and it's basically a third bars, a third restaurants, and a third brewery tap rooms.
Okay.
We've got customers in 75, I think it actually sounds 76, I looked the other day, countries, predominantly U.S., Western Europe, parts of LATAM and Asia. But we've got onesies, twosies, and very remote places, which is cool. You can generally find an Untappd verified venue. It's what we call you when you become a customer, because you're able to publish your beer menu using our software. And just last week, we announced that you can now publish your wine and spirits menu. So in the past, customers that used our software I alluded to earlier could publish their beer items using our database, but they had to freeform wine, spirits, and food menu items. So pull that description off, one winery's website, go to another winery's website for, 2 other wines. And that was a really manual and labor intensive process. And we partnered with Wine Searcher. If you're familiar with that website, if you Google most wines, they're kind of the first.
Well, I'm not, but I saw on your announcement about doing that.
Yeah, so if you Google most wines, they're the first or second result.
Okay.
They're predominantly web-based, based in New Zealand, but we'd known them for a long time, and felt like we had the best beer database. And if we couple that with great wine and spirits database, we could really provide a full solution for drinks-focused establishments. We already had food menu publishing, and I like to say that beer, wine, and spirits are SKUified. Right, a Sierra Nevada Pale Ale here is no different than Sierra Nevada Pale Ale in California or Minnesota or Texas. The same product, same SKU. Whereas food, right, you're going to describe those individual restaurant menu items a little differently. So it's really difficult to sort of skewify dishes that may not exist anywhere. Maybe there's some, special, we're down the street from Dilworth Neighborhood Grill, right? They do things differently. Their, chicken spidey might be different than, another locations. And so that's not a skewified item. And our goal was to save operators, whether they be bars or restaurants or brewery tap rooms that are increasingly getting into wine and spirits. You've seen some of that here in Charlotte, to streamline the publication of their menu. And so we think we've done a nice job of that, especially with the Wine Searcher partnership for wine and spirits. And then the second piece of that is promote those menus back to the Untapped audience. So if you're an Untapped for Business customer, you publish your menu. It lives in the Untapped app for your venue. Our users can subscribe. So as you rotate beers on or off, they get updates as you have an event, maybe a tap takeover or live music. You promote that. Our users get notifications saying, hey, X, Y, or Z brewery, tap room, or bar has this event or just added these beers. And so, we've seen, and I think demonstrated with kind of empirical evidence, the closed loop, the app check-ins increase. We are able to drive foot traffic into these venues. So on one side, we are saving you time publishing your menu. You're publishing it in one place and it's pushing to your website, to print, to digital signage, and then back to the Untapped app. And that's sort of the second side of the value prop, which is we're going to help drive foot traffic from beer enthusiasts, and those tend to be higher ticket sizes. So we help save our restaurant and bar and brewery tap room partners time and help them make a little more money too.
How do you guys attract new business?
Yeah, so historically, we had an inside sales team, and that was really the growth engine. So it was predictable in 2016. So we had inside sales team members who would call on venues that we saw received a lot of check-ins in the Untapped app. So we were blessed from a customer acquisition perspective, in the sense that our app was really our lead list. So if a venue was getting a lot of check-ins from our users, we knew they were likely to be, at least a venue that had a decent craft beer offering. Up and until the Wine Searcher partnership, we really were not a great fit for a venue that had, 2 macro light lagers and a big wine and spirits list, right? Or cocktail program.
Okay.
That was not going to be a fit. So the Untapped app was our lead list, right? If a venue had, it was kind of over 50 check-ins in the early days, that was the threshold. If it got over 50 check-ins, it was going to get fed into our sales CRM, and we were going to give them a call and see if they were interested. We've begun to do more digital marketing, more self-serve sign-up, so prospective customers can now go to the website and sign up without talking to anyone, which is hard, right? You kind of have mixed feelings about that when you grow up and go to what they call product-led growth, but we've done that. But we still have a robust inside sales program, but we've become a little more sophisticated in how we do digital marketing. And then word of mouth, right? I mean, as you know, this is a very collegial industry, both restaurants and bars. And then, I was just in Nashville at Craft Brewers Conference last week, put on by the Brewers Association. And, what I find is that, these city guild events, people, they're kind of the best of frenemies, right? Like, they want to see each other be successful. I think most craft brewers want craft to win out and continue to take share.
Agreed.
Right? We're at like 14% of volume and almost 30% of dollar value now. And I think all craft brewers recognize that, as that number continues to increase, kind of a rising tide lifts all boats. So I think generally they're willing to kind of share best practices. And fortunately, I think Untapped for Business has become, as Schedulefly has, a best practice or a trusted solution to go to. Among others, certainly, but word of mouth really helps as well.
Tons of collaboration. That's what I've seen. I think it's great. I love it. Okay, so, and you've got 20,000 customers
approaching
now.
20,000 customers, and that was, we thought we'd be out of that, and COVID, right? They say, best laid plans, right? And COVID definitely was a hiccup and a speed bump. We'd already be over that threshold if it weren't for COVID, but life throws you the curveball, and you figure out how to adjust and adapt.
One of the things that struck me recently, I was at this event, this organization called Eat Denver. It's like an association, a few hundred Denver area restaurants and bars and independent ones. And the guy who's a CFO of Snooze AM Eatery gets up and he shows this slide. You may have seen it. It's like a hub and spoke slide where the hospitality business is at the center, and each spoke represents a different type of technology: website, scheduling, inventory management, point of sale, whatever. And within each spoke, there were a bunch of logos of restaurant technology companies. And he said on this slide, I think there was 235 different logos of restaurant tech companies. And I went up, I was like looking at it, and I was like, man, we're not even on there. And we've been doing this a long time, and we weren't even on there for scheduling, which whatever it is, that wasn't what bothered me. What bothered me the most was I sit there and think about this from an operator's perspective. And I spoke to the guy afterwards. I'm like, I don't know how you do it. Like, how do you filter that? He's like, well, there's 235 on there. There's probably, 300 different restaurant tech companies. You may even that may be a conservative estimate. I mean, there's so much restaurant technology, restaurant and hospitality technology. My point behind all this is one of the things that I've really struggled with recently is just I look at this from a customer's perspective, and I think it's got to be over freaking whelming that there's so much technology, and there's, you can die death by 1,000 cuts if you buy too much technology in a restaurant. You've got 15 different platforms doing 15 different things.
The shelfware, right? You buy it and it sits on the shelf, and no one implements it. And there's a lot of that in this industry.
There is a lot of that in this industry, and who benefits? The company that sells it. But if you like, the reason I'm bringing this up, Trace, is like we're one of those. You're one of those. There's also a lot of consolidation going on right now. There's like one-stop shop type stuff, and there's point of sales companies that are just sucking everything in and putting it all in one place, and it's an attractive proposition because it's all here. It is. It's all, but then everything is done kind of average, and what you do you're really good at, and what we do we're really good at, and I just wonder, like, do you think about that a lot? Is that something that you plan for, or do you guys just heads down, just keep doing what you're doing, and chips will fall where they may down the road, but you got 20,000 customers and you want to get to 30,000 and figure out the best way to get there?
Yeah, the answer is a little bit of both. It's funny, I'd not seen the CFO from Snooze's chart, but I've seen a lot of those through the years, and you're like, why aren't we on that? And I've seen some where they were like maps of beverage technology, and you see startups on there that are failing or 120th their size. It's like, how did they get on there? Like, who do they know? And so it's funny that you mentioned that, because I've definitely seen those, and so that is sort of it gives it away. I do think about it a lot. I think one thing that we talk about is if you try to be everything to everyone, you end up being nothing to no one. I've seen a lot of ambitious startups who are like, we are going to be the solution for everything in the hospitality space.
Yeah,
and there are probably a couple hundred sort of different configurations or approaches to running a restaurant or bar. And, I'll speak specifically to breweries, having just come back from the Craft Brewers Conference, but I tell my friends a lot who ask me, like, okay, talk to me about serving breweries with software. Because, we've spent a lot of time talking about Untapped and Untapped for Business, but we also have a platform called Ollie that's a brewery management solution. So MRP, production management, CRM, ordering, invoicing, payments, et cetera. And, I think about a brewery, right? So if you're a brewer, you are running a manufacturing facility. You got a procurement arm, right? Raw ingredients, packaging materials. You've got really a marketing arm, right? A lot of these craft brewers have, fantastic labeling, great Instagram accounts, but you've got to be a damn good marketer. Some of them, if they self-distribute, they're running a logistics business. Even if they don't, they've got a wholesaler. They got to keep the wholesaler honest, so they're managing that. Brewery tap rooms are kind of in vogue, obviously. That's where a lot of the growth in craft brewing is. So they're running effectively a restaurant or, liaising with, food trucks to be outside on Saturdays at 2. So you're managing that process. Running a merchandise business. A lot of them sell merchandise.
Yep.
Many are selling online now. So you're managing, online sales. Like, these are complicated businesses for the size they are. They are not straightforward. And the same is obviously true with restaurants and bars too. And I think every step of that process, there's the opportunity for software. I don't think necessarily software is needed at every step, right? There's bad software, there's software that doesn't fit. And I don't think that you'll ever see consolidation in this industry that serves, the number varies, but the generally sort of accepted number of retail outlets with an alcohol license is 500,000. There's not going to be one solution for all 500,000. There's just not. There's too many different configurations, and it's trite, but folks say, design for the novice, configure for the expert. I don't think you can configure anything that suits all 500,000 operators, but there's definitely consolidation. You and I were talking about point of sale before we got on here, and, Toast and Square and Clover, through Fiserv, they have a hell of a lot more money than we do.
Yeah.
And so I think if you're going to try to take them on, you got to raise a hell of a lot of money if you're going to be successful. I think there are niches that you can play in and be really successful, but I think the POS battle at scale, that's going to serve, the majority of coffee shops or, venues like that, that's kind of been won. But the needs of a brewery taproom are very different than the needs of a coffee shop. And so I think whether it's Schedule Fly or Untapped for Business or Ollie, certainly there's plenty of white space for us to play in. So we think less about consolidation probably in the restaurant and bar space. We think a lot about it in breweries. We do, one of our aims is to be kind of the full stack technology provider for breweries, but you're serving one customer set, right? It's not, okay, we're going to try to be the full stack kind of brewery in a box also for wineries or distilleries or dive bars or, high-end restaurants. Like, we're not trying to do all that. We are focused on that in breweries, but certainly not for every restaurant and bar in this country and beyond.
So to do that, you just continue to grow and you continue to acquire, and you're not going to develop technology for all those needs they have. You're going to buy businesses that have that and add that to your suite.
That's right. Some of the technology's homegrown. We've acquired. Untapped was, started by two founders who were kind of ready to do it full time. They were doing it part time. One had a job at ABC, one had a job at Disney, and they were kind of looking for a home that was independent and would be good shepherds of what they'd built and not ruin the independence of the platform.
Yeah.
Like some of the suitors would have. And so we were a fit for them. Just got back from Craft Brewers Conference. They had the off-cycle September Craft Brewers Conference in 2021 due to COVID, and met two fantastic developers. One who was a brewer at BJ's before taking on a full-time software engineering job, who built a brewery management platform. And I'd seen a lot of these. There's 7 or 8 of them in our space, and I thought he'd built the very best one that I demoed. And I said, with all due respect, like you mentioned, you have a couple dozen customers. Why don't you have more? He goes, well, we have full-time jobs. We come to CBC every year, and whoever we pick up at CBC as a new customer, that's kind of it for the year. And then there's a little bit of word of mouth. I said, well, how would you like to work on this full time? And I can't remember what they were doing for their full-time jobs, but not near as interesting as building software for breweries. And Darren Hayner and Frank West, the founder, said, oh, we'd love to do that. So we made that acquisition, brought it into the fold. That's the brewery management system, Ollie. Mm-hmm. And it's fun to watch them at CBC now, right, where they went from having, a small booth and very little resources, no reach. This was very difficult to distribute and very limited time, right? It was a nights and weekends kind of passion project for them to now be able to work on it full time and see how much you can accelerate product development that way. So in some cases, we thought about that. It's like, okay, to build a great brewery management system, it probably takes 2 years and a handful of engineers. They were 2 engineers who worked on it part-time, I think, for 7 years until we made the acquisition. So they built a hell of a lot, and it was really well done. And so in that case, it made sense for us to acquire our way into the space. And other times it makes sense for us to build it. But generally, we have a good sense for which route to go, build versus buy. And, buy for us doesn't mean we're going to take your company and rate it. Frank and Darren are both on the team, and now they've got bigger teams and more resources to help accelerate that product development. And so when we think about acquisitions, we talk about, the 3 Ps, the people, the product and the performance. So is the business performing? And that doesn't need to mean that it's a massive business. Is customer retention really good? And in the case of Ollie, which was fermentable, we had to rebrand it. And Frank and Darren, they'd not sold a ton of customers, but their customers were very, very happy, high retention. We thought they were phenomenal people. They knew the industry, similar values. We thought that these were people that we could work with and build something special with. And then we thought the product was really good. So it's really those 3 Ps that we evaluate as we think about whether an acquisition makes sense. And if it doesn't, then we'll find a way to go build it.
You don't have you mentioned Toast. I mean, this is a publicly traded company. They're everywhere now. People are, a lot of breweries I know that are using Toast. You don't have the scale to, the resources to compete with them. If you're going to be a full suite, full stack technology for breweries, you eventually got to have point of sale, don't you? Isn't that?
Yeah, I don't know that we need to own point of sale. I do think we have to integrate with point of sale. So we just announced 2 weeks ago an integration with GoTab, which serves many breweries. It's a great point of sale solution. And certainly we are talking to others about similar integrations. We like to kind of dip our toe in with one partner, see how the integration works. We've done similar things with partners like Pour My Beer, some of the self-pour platforms that are common in craft beer focused bars now. So we've done things like that, and that's where we'll start with GoTab and see how that goes and goes from there. To my earlier point, I think you better have raised a hell of a lot of money to go take Toast on head on, and that's not what we want to do, right? That's kind of a boom or bust proposition if you're going to go raise $200 million and take them on. And we think we're really good at what we can do, and we think there's a nice moat, right? Unless you have the beer catalog that we have, it'd be hard to replicate our menu publishing platform, and that is the moat. And we get calls all the time. We'd love to use your data to build a menu publishing solution. We see your menus everywhere. It's like, well, yeah, that's a little bit of a problem because that's our business, right? And so if we license that to you, then we've just created a competitor. So we're really focused on that, and if we can find a way to support mutual customers, we need to figure out an integration, right? We've been talking about it. We need to think about something we can do. But certainly that's our approach to POS as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you, yes, we should certainly figure out a way to help each other. No doubt about it. You're welcome to tell all your 20,000 customers about us and how great we are. No, just kidding. Well, but I do ask you, you'll share as much as you want to share, Trace, because this is a public, podcast in a public forum, but I'm super curious, what is your stated plan for this business long term? I mean, you have investors, you eventually need to provide some sort of an exit or some sort of return to those folks. Is that part of your official roadmap, or what do you want to do with this thing ultimately?
Yeah, what I tell the team and what I earnestly believe is we would not, we don't have venture backing, right? So I think with firms that are backed by kind of VC firms, it's really boom or bust, right? They're looking for slugging percentage, not batting average. With a venture firm, a $300 million venture fund that's early in a business that becomes a unicorn or a decacorn, they've returned their whole fund with 1 or 2 deals. And so they're very happy to see 80% of their portfolio blow up. Not very happy, but that works, right? The math works.
Right. They don't mind.
Yeah, they don't mind.
Part of the plan.
They don't mind. And that's why I mentioned that Kurt and I had avoided that one. We didn't think that, some venture investors from New York or the Bay Area were going to be super eager to get on an airplane and come to Charlotte or Wilmington, North Carolina 4 times a year for board meetings. So I don't know that it would have been available to us even if we'd wanted to go that route. But we built a real business that was profitable. And I mentioned we felt like we were bursting at the seams, and we just felt like we needed a little bit more primary capital to accelerate some of what we wanted to do. So it's, can we take what would take us 8 or 10 years to do and compress it to a 2 or 3 year time frame? And that's what we were able to do, right? With PSG's backing, we were able to hire some engineers ahead of when we would have been able to do and have the cash to do that. Certainly they want to return at some point. Most of their businesses get sold to other financial backers. Certainly some have been sold to public companies or taken public. I don't really make that call, right? I have a say, but my goal is to put my head down and work with the team to build the best business we can. And, I like optionality, and if we're doing what we need to be doing and performing well, we're going to have good options whenever that time comes. So, not something I think too much about day to day. I just am focused on building great software. Our vision is, build great things, delight our customers, and improve lives. And if we do those three things, everything else will work out.
How long have you been in this office space?
We moved into this office space I'm going to mix my timelines up here on when we signed the lease. We signed the lease in late 2020 and moved in April of 21. So about 2 years now, which is hard to believe.
So you moved in here in the COVID environment.
We did. So I felt like we've got about 105 employees.
That was my next question.
Yeah, about 105, and it's slow today because it's Monday, and there's some teams that work from home on Mondays, but normally we have kind of 15 to 20 people in here, and then we have about 85 remote team members. We made the conscious decision before COVID to do all of product and engineering remotely. So our head of product for Untapped and Untapped for Business, EVP of product, Kyle Roderick, who's unbelievable. He's been with us for, I guess, almost 7 years now. He's been in California since the early days. Okay. So when COVID happened, we were already on Slack. We were already on Zoom. We already knew how to accommodate remote employees and make sure that they felt included in meetings and weren't sitting there on mute with their hand raised, wanting to get into the conversation. And in fact, a lot of the space was built out for that, right? I mean, we've not gone over the top here. It's a nice space, but if there's one area that we definitely did a great job of and invested in heavily, it's our EV, right? If you're going to have, calls where 3/4 of the team members on the call are going to be at their desks, you need to have a damn good AV setup. So we think we've got a really good setup there for Zoom, Teams, Google Meets, whatever your video conferencing solution of choice is, we can accommodate it. And so 105 folks and about 20 here and 85 remotely. And this space is also, you see, we got a big conference room here. It's an open space. We have a lot of teams come in, use the space throughout the year. So whether it's kind of an annual meetup or, biannual team meetings, our product teams in here a lot, and they fly in from all over the country and use this as kind of the central hub, which has been great.
It's a beautiful space. I was very curious how many folks are typically in here on a daily basis. I just, we've never had office space, so we're all remote, and we're kind of a weird setup. But I actually because I haven't had it in so long, I miss being around just a bunch of other people that are doing the same thing. Like, it's one of the, I say a disadvantage. It's just one of the things about our setup where, 3 guys in Wilmington, 1 Raleigh, me and Charlotte, we're all working out of our houses. We're just never around each other. So I go sit in coffee shops and just to be around people sometimes. But it's good to have, it's great that people can work remote now. It's wonderful. The flexibility is fantastic. But when everybody's in one place, a lot of good things happen. Serendipity, which you mentioned, there's a lot of serendipitous stuff happening when everybody's physically in one place, or as many as possible are, and just sharing ideas and having conversations.
Yeah, we talk about communication a lot. It's communication is part of one of our core values. Communicate directly and with goodwill, and it's one of those things that we talk about a lot. So like on Slack, when you Slack someone and they're in the middle of a meeting or on a Zoom, it's like shoulder tapping. It's an interruption, right? But if I go walk to our fridge to grab a water and one of my colleagues sees me and is walking there too, and we have a conversation, that's not shoulder tapping. That's just like a water cooler conversation, right? As trite as it may be. And you may be able to work 2 things out right there that then doesn't require a meeting. And so I'm with you. Like I prefer in person. I just think for what we do at the scale we're at, having everyone in one space and being able to recruit types of folks we need. I think unless you're in the Bay Area, it would be really tough, or maybe New York, it'd be really tough to do it all in one place with no remotes. We're pretty engineering heavy, product heavy, and we've been fortunate to have some awesome team members we've hired in places like Pittsburgh or Kansas City, Omaha, Los Angeles. And so it's worked out well for us. But I'm with you. I mean, my first 2 jobs, you were in person all the time, whether it was 8 a.m. or 3 a.m, you were there. There was no work from home option, and I like the flexibility. I think it definitely, we talk about improving lives. right? If we've got someone that's worked for us for 2 years and has done a phenomenal job, and they've got a plumber coming, like them being able to work from home and take a Zoom call while the plumber's there instead of like having to take PTO, like that's just better for everyone, right? And so there are parts of it that I really like. And we do make an effort. I mean, last week at CBC, we had 25 people there. A lot of those people had never met each other before, newer team members.
25, really?
Yeah. We had some newer team members there that had not met some longstanding members of our team. And so we, would have been cheaper to take 15 people, and we probably could have, accomplished a lot with just 15, but taking those extra 10 and, having them kind of learn who we are and spend time with us, there's value in that. Like in person, it's just, to your point, it's tough to replicate.
All right, I'm going to ask some really like basic beer questions, because I'm somebody that just goes out, and I'm 48 now. Okay. And what I've learned is over the years of having different types of beers is I realize, like, especially now at my age, I'm like, I just need to get the thing with the least amount of alcohol in it. Like, I literally look on a menu and go, okay, I want the one that's 4.3 because that has the lowest alcohol content.
That's a big trend. Low and no alc is the hot trend in the industry. I've
noticed some of that. But here's the thing. So we don't have to get it. Like, I don't want to get into all the politics and everything with the Bud Light thing. But, it had an impact on Bud Light. That's probably, I guess, in some ways, good for craft beers if craft beers are trying to get more market share, and, some big brand is having problems and maybe people look to craft breweries more. But one of the things I find is, like you mentioned this earlier, that IPAs always get these great ratings and all this kind of stuff. But am I an audience for these craft breweries? Are there people like me that are like, just give me a good light beer, like brew a good light beer, so that when I don't want to, like when I go to a restaurant, I'm probably going to order a Bud Light or a Coors Light or whatever, like, or Yuengling. I like Yuengling because it's an American-owned brewery, and it's the oldest, and I think it's the largest. I think all the other ones are owned by foreign entities, right? So
yeah, it might be the largest independent. I should know that. It might well be the largest independent U.S. owned brewery. I do think they have some foreign ownership, but I think it's a majority still owned by.
It's like
Americans.
Fourth generation family. Yeah. But my point is, like, I'm like going to go get a light beer, but then I go to a brewery. I'm like, I don't know, like, what has the least alcohol? Right. Is there more of that happening now, or just?
Yeah, I mean, one of the hottest growing brands in craft is Athletic Brewing. That's no alc, right? All non-alc brews. So, I mean, they launched 4 or 5 years ago now, and they just took a big investment from Dr. Pepper Keurig. And
really,
I tell you, I mean, they can ship direct to consumer because there's no alcohol in the product, which the regulatory direct to consumer situation in beer is just. I'm trying to be diplomatic here. It's silly relative to wine and spirits. There's only depending on kind of the licensure, there's 17 states, so you absolutely cannot ship beer within or into. There's 22 where it's a little less certain, and there's only 11 where it's like expressly permitted. Expressly permitted. So, but yeah, Athletic, it's hot. I'd say, with our user base, the hot styles. So we have a 5-point rating scale with sort of quarter-point increment ratings for most users, and it's kind of IPAs, stouts, and sours are going to be rated higher than other styles. I think some of that has to do with, for IPAs, the hoppiness, right? The haze craze. That's what the core craft consumer, the enthusiast craft consumer wants. It's not for me, frankly. Like, I'm not a fan of, your double IPAs or super hoppy hazies. That's just not my MO. Actually, I did a tasting panel in the Netherlands with the guy that leads kind of sensory tasting for Heineken. And it turns out I'm a full taster, so they can profile consumers around the world. And I'm what they call a full taster. So I detect bitterness fully, which is why, I have a really hoppy IPA. It feels like my face has been blown off, which is maybe why IPA is not my go-to style. And then you got these barrel-aged stouts that are really high ABV that, can be cellared, and they're really hot too. But yeah, I mean, look, if you go to, probably any craft brewery tap room, you can get a good Mexican lager. We actually presented some data at the Craft Brewers Conference last year that showed that lagers are picking up steam. Non-alc continues to pick up steam. That's actually be interesting for your customer base. We looked at venues that had received check-ins, or we call them venues internally, but like retail outlets, so on-premise bars, restaurants that had received check-ins of non-alc products. And, it's doubled since pre-COVID. So I think there were, in our data about 7,000 bars and restaurants that had a check-in of a non-alc beer pre-COVID, and now it's approaching 20,000. So
Really?
That's a hot trend. And look, they're great options. That is one area that the rest of the world is ahead of the U.S. in. You go to small craft breweries in England or the Netherlands, they're going to have 2 or 3 non-alc options, and generally they're pretty good. Here, they're getting better. We've also seen that in our data. The average rating of non-alc beers from our consumer base has continued to increase each year since 2019. And so I think some of that might be an appreciation for non-alc among the consumers, but some of it's just, brewers brewing better non-alc beer. A lot of it's contract brewed. It's not done on premise. There's different ways that you can brew a non-alc beer, and some of it's very different than the process for brewing, regular kind of full alc beer.
Is Athletic Brewing, they're not local, are they?
No, they're in Stamford, Connecticut, and they have a brewery location, I think, in San Diego as well.
I asked that because I was trying to, it hit me while you were talking. They are a new sponsor of a local podcast called Champagne Problems. Have you ever heard of, Robbie Shaw and the Champagne Problems? Yeah, they sponsor that podcast. But okay, that sounds like an interesting one. Well, yeah, that's good. I didn't realize there was that much non-alc stuff going on. I don't mind a little bit of, but I just can't handle, like, I'll drink one that's like 7.6%. It just floors me now.
I'm with you. I'm real thin, and I'm short on sleep now with a 7-month-old. And so, the more time I can spend in the 4 and 5% range, the better.
Well, that was the last thing I want to ask you about. I want to respect your time, but, congrats on becoming a father. And that's another element that, it's a real thing. Like, you're a CEO of a growing business. You now have a child at home. Sleep becomes a factor, and there's a lot of dynamics that come into play. So my only advice, like just through learning, is make sure you're getting as much sleep as you can, and sleep, exercise, because it gets harder and harder to balance. Like it becomes challenging as they start to grow, and you want to find time with them, but you got a business to run, and boy, sleep is big, man. And when you're not getting it, it just makes everything so much more challenging.
It does. We have a saying in software that things can be fast, good, or cheap. You can choose 2 of the 3, but not all 3. And
fast, good, or cheap.
And I think the same is probably true of parenthood. It's a different triangle, but it's probably good parent, good career, and hobbies. And I've chosen 2 career hobbies, career and parenthood, not hobbies. So yeah. I now know why none of my friends who have had kids, are as interested in sports or, in movies as they were pre-child. So the hobbies definitely have taken a backseat, which is for the best.
Well, it's to bring this full circle though, breweries are a real, who would have thought back in the day it was like a family place, but now all these craft breweries are, people go with their whole family, their kids, their babies, their dogs, and just hang out, and there's kind of something for everybody. Brilliant that they're doing that, because it's just, that's where do we want to go? I just can't imagine 10 years going like, let's take the family to the brewery. But now it's pretty common, isn't it?
Yeah, it's real common. It's funny, you keep leading me into stuff that we presented data on just last week. It's almost as if you'd seen the presentation, which I don't think you have. I think you'd have told me if you'd seen it. But we looked at check-ins from our users to brewery tap rooms, and they continue to take share from bars and pubs. And I think a lot of that is, one, there's more of them, right? So depending on kind of how you categorize things, there's, close to 10,000 tap rooms now. Most states allow own premise, so, consumption on the premises of a brewery. And so there's just more of them. That's kind of the hot new model. I think about Legion Brewing. Phil Bushy here in Charlotte's a good friend, and they now have 4 locations in Charlotte, and they're all beautiful, right? There's these showpiece tap rooms that are great spaces with great food to go hang out in, or John Marino at OMB, another great spot that's been kind of an institution in Charlotte, kind of the godfather of craft beer here in our neck of the woods. And those are great spaces to spend time. And so, if you can get a good meal and a good pint or 2, and the kid can get a nap or look around, run around, like they're great spaces to spend time. And our data backs that up. We're seeing more and more of our users spend an increasing amount of their time in tap rooms.
Which is the local brewery that does it's got the Woodbury connection? They do like
Triple C, David Harker's brother runs Triple C. Oh, and Towns Moser at Lenny Boy.
Lenny Boy,
Towns is a
that's the one.
classmate of mine.
Okay.
Sorry, I was thinking, I saw Harker over the weekend, so I was thinking David Harker.
Yeah.
I'm sure you know his brother runs Triple C.
I didn't know that. But
Yeah,
okay.
Towns Moser was a classmate of mine, Lenny Boy Brewing. They've got a great beer program, but also about half, I think, their business is kombucha. So you see a lot of their kombucha.
Did they start with kombucha or
They started with kombucha, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, they might have been doing beer too. I can't remember. I do know kombucha was an early focus. So, I mean, their kombucha's been, in bottles and shelves at Whole Foods and Reed's for as long as I can remember. As long as I've lived in Charlotte,
Yeah.
Towns has had kombucha in groceries and corner stores, and so he's done an awesome job. It's a great space, another great tap room, right? We've hosted some events there, and last time I was over there with a group of people, they were doing like blackout yoga in the event hall. So
what is blackout yoga?
So it was like they turn the lights out, people get painted with like glow in the dark paint. And yoga, yeah, it was not blackout in the sense of alcohol. Not what not
Okay.
yeah, no, it was like glow in the dark yoga, and there's like 300 people in there, and they do run clubs.
Hold
over
this
there.
downward dog and
Yeah.
and like just shoot beer until you pass out.
That was not it. It was a good item to get clarification on. It was crazy.
Well, okay, so we'll bring this. We'll wrap up with this. We'll bring this full circle back to our common connection with Woodbury. I'm going to be up there this week, and you mentioned that you're really close to Mr. Huber. Do you have a can of the Mr. Huber beer that Towns is?
I do. So
Okay.
Towns pulled some aside for me. I was not able to go to our reunion. Actually, I graduated 2006. So my 15-year reunion was 2021. It all got jumbled up. They did multiple classes at the same time because of COVID. I was not able to go because getting from scenic Orange, Virginia to Minneapolis for the Craft Brewers Conference in September of 21 was just not doable.
Yeah.
So I was super bummed to miss it. They had that beer there. There was one for, I think it was a Red Ink Lager. That was the Reimers one. There were two.
This was last year. This was 2022.
So he did it again. Okay, so 2021 they had it too.
They
He
had
might have
the
done it. He might have done it both sides.
They had the reunion up there 2021.
Maybe it's 22.
I went last year.
Yeah,
It was
you're
the
right. You're
combined
right. Sorry.
thing.
Minneapolis was May. Sorry, I'm getting confused. They did two CBCs in 6 months. They did Denver September 21, May 22 was Minneapolis. That's the one I missed. And they had, I think it was a Red Ink Lager, which was the John Reimers beer.
Yep.
And then what was Huber's called? I'm going to have to look it up. But Towns, I couldn't go because I had to get from Orange to Minneapolis in May and not September. These are the things that, with baby brain that blend together. But yeah, Towns pulled some aside for me. So that was a great idea. Pretty clever.
It's incredible. I asked Bill to save a can because they did it just the last month or whatever. They did they have Miss Rob.
Okay.
And they had Miss Rob, Mr. Huber, and Mr. Reed, who were all retiring or whatever. But I asked Bill to save some cans for me. Those are
It's a great
those
concept.
are keepers. Yeah,
Great
no,
concept.
they
that
definitely
Towns
are.
has.
Yeah, it was last year because the 2007 was there also.
That's right.
And my class was there. And 92, old timers. But y'all had like the 07 lacrosse team was playing against like the 02 lacrosse team. And three of us from 92 convinced them, like look, we're old, but we can maybe hang. And we went out and played with them. It was so much freaking fun. It was
I'm glad no one got hurt. That's
nobody
like a
got
recipe
hurt.
for an Achilles or a pulled hand.
No Achilles, no pulled hamstrings. Like it was a good time, man. It was a competitive game. Like people were getting after it. It was a lot of fun. Look, man, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. What a great business that you and your team have built, and just continued success to y'all, man. This is a cool story, and I love hanging out with you, and let's keep talking. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that, we should at minimum be telling our customers about each other.
Absolutely. I have a lot of respect for what you've built, how you've done it. I think, there's more than one way to skin the cat, with how you grow. And, I really have admired, one, in talking to you. I think we first met at Amelie's,
Yeah.
A little local coffee shop and bakery. And, to your point, we got up and you're like, hey, I'm just going to work here from the day. To your point about liking to be around people without an office. I remember that. But, you really, stressed and impressed upon me like Schedule Fly's customer support orientation and how important that is. And, I think it's something that, we've always taken pride in, but you all seem to do a phenomenal job with, and something I hear from our shared customers. And so have a ton of respect for what you've built and how you've done it. And yeah, let's keep the conversation open. And it's been a lot of fun to come on the show today. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man.
Go
Absolutely.
Tigers.
Go Tigers. That's a wrap, y'all. See ya.